I never thought humiliation could come wrapped in birthday paper. At my mother's mansion, my son Theo unwrapped his gift, a worn teddy bear with uneven button eyes. Minutes earlier, my nephew Jack had torn through wrapping on a brand new PlayStation 5 with games and controllers. Theo looked up, confusion clouding his bright eyes. "Mom, is my bear a collector's item?" he whispered, trying to find value in his present. My heart shattered, but I forced a smile. Some things have more character when they've been loved before, I managed. Veronica, my mother, sipped Chardonnay, watching for disappointment to register on my face. The Warren family real estate empire could afford gaming systems for favored grandchildren, but not a new toy for her eldest daughter's son. I'd left the family business to work at an elementary school and care facility rather than endure her constant criticism. She pushed me out when I became pregnant and refused to marry Theo's father, who vanished after months of gaslighting. Humiliation has a scent, expensive perfume mixed with contempt. I sat at the edge of the rehearsal dinner in my only formal dress while Natalie floated through the restaurant like royalty. Theo sat beside me, wearing the suit I'd saved for months to afford. His sketchbook peeked from the pocket I'd sewn. My artistic boy never went anywhere without it. Natalie, the golden child of our mother's empire, was flawless in her designer dress. She'd stepped directly into a VP position at Warren Properties while I worked double shifts for my mortgage. Her diamonds cost more than my yearly salary, catching light with each laugh. "Ellis. You actually made it," she called, making heads turn. "And you brought Theo? He's getting big." No warmth, just performance before she moved to the next admirer. Bennett, her fiancé, surprised me. Unlike Natalie's usual type, he seemed genuine, an architect who'd built his practice from nothing. He knelt to Theo's level, showing interest in his drawings. I felt a pang. This was how family should behave. As dinner ended, Natalie clinked her glass. "I just want to say how wonderful it is having everyone here," she began with practiced charm. "Even my sister Ellis managed to take time from her busy schedule," she said. Laughter rippled through the room. "I guess some of us were meant for greater things," she added with a pointed look. Theo whispered, "Why does Natalie talk like that?" Bennett's expression tightened slightly. "Some people need to feel taller by making others small," I whispered back. The church was spectacular, orchids, crystals, and social climbers everywhere. We were seated at the edge of this family section, included yet invisible. Theo sat beside me, occasionally touching the sketchbook in his pocket. Natalie glided down the aisle like a movie star, Veronica beaming from the front row. I smiled politely, clapped when expected, and answered politely when people asked, "Weren't you supposed to take over the family business?" At the reception, our table was by the service entrance. Theo squeezed my hand. "It's okay, Mom. The view is still nice from here." Then came the speeches. Bennett's friend told funny stories about architectural school. Then Natalie stood, diamond bracelet catching the light. "I want to thank everyone," she began. "And say something special about my big sister." Theo looked up expectantly. "Ellis has been such a role model," Natalie continued. "She's shown exactly what happens when you think you're too good for the family business." Laughter spread through the room. "She's a single mom, working 2 jobs, the perfect cautionary tale," she said. My heart raced as Theo whispered, "Why is she saying those things about you?" Then Veronica's voice cut through, "She's our family's walking lesson plan. What happens when you think you know better than those who raised you?" The cruel laughter confirmed my status, not family, just the family embarrassment. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Heat crawled up my neck and burned across my face, but I refused to let a single tear fall, not in front of my son, not in front of these people. My fingers gripped my napkin under the table like it was the only thing keeping me from drowning. I scanned the room desperately, searching for a single compassionate face, anyone who might meet my eyes and silently acknowledge this wasn't okay. Grandpa Walter, once a respected history professor who used to call me his little lioness, stared down at his plate, his shoulders slightly hunched. My cousin scrolled through her phone, a small smirk playing at her lips. Even my uncle, who once told me I had my father's determined spirit, suddenly found his wineglass fascinating. Theo looked lost, his sensitive artist soul absorbing every cruel laugh. His eyebrows pulled together, confused and hurt. That was the moment that broke something inside me, not the humiliation, not the laughter, not even the betrayal. It was watching my son witness his mother being turned into a spectacle by her own family. The same boy who proudly showed me his drawings each night, who bravely faced a world that already sometimes mocked his gentle nature, was now watching the people who should love us most treat us with contempt. I wanted to flee. I wanted to grab Theo's hand, walk out the door, and never look back at the Warren family name. But something in me hesitated. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to defend not just myself but the life I'd built, the night classes I took after working double shifts, the children I helped at school, the elderly patients whose hands I held when their own families couldn't be bothered to visit. They didn't know half of what I'd carried, what I'd overcome. But my mouth was desert dry, my legs trembling beneath the table like autumn leaves. Then, before I could gather myself, I heard the distinctive sound of a chair scraping against hardwood. Bennett, the groom, Natalie's seemingly perfect, polished architect fiancé, stood up slowly. His expression wasn't amused or embarrassed. It was resolute. He didn't look at Natalie. He didn't acknowledge the crowd. His eyes connected directly with mine, and something in his gaze made the entire ballroom fall silent. In that electric moment, I knew something monumental was about to happen, not a scene, not a distraction. A reckoning. People often think being the older sibling means you lead the way, that you're looked up to. But in the Warren family, I was more of a cautionary tale than a role model. I'm Ellis. I'm 34, a single mom, and the black sheep of a family obsessed with appearances and success. I live in an aging townhouse on the outskirts of Westfield with my son Theo. He's 8, artistic, sensitive, and the absolute best thing that ever happened to me. He's also the only reason I ever walk back into rooms filled with people who once made me feel smaller than dust. I work 2 jobs, days as an administrative assistant at Oak Ridge Elementary School, nights at Pine Valley Care Home where I help elderly residents who've been all but forgotten by their families. Life isn't glamorous, but it's honest. I make Theo pancakes shaped like dinosaurs on Saturday mornings. I know how to sew special pockets into his clothes for his art supplies. He tells me I'm his superhero when I chase away the shadows under his bed. That's all I need to keep going. But being a single mom in the Warren family meant more than just disappointment. It meant I was deliberately excised, like a blemish from a family portrait. My mother, Veronica, the matriarch of Warren Real Estate, made sure I felt my failure at every family gathering. She believes in appearances above all else. That's why she tells her country club friends that Natalie's wedding represents the true future of the Warren legacy. Natalie is 5 years younger than me, with our mother's ambition and none of her hard edges, at least not where anyone important can see them. She's beautiful, successful as a vice president in the family business, and has always had resources and opportunities delivered on silver platters while somehow making it look like she fought for every advantage. She's the golden child, the Warren family standard bearer. Veronica adores her. If Natalie mentions a headache, our mother calls her personal physician. When I once came down with pneumonia while working double shifts, she told me to take some store-brand medicine and stop being so dramatic. When I became pregnant with Theo, everything imploded. I was 25, working my way up in the family business, newly in love with a man who promised we'd build something beautiful together. By month 5, when morning sickness had finally subsided and I could feel my baby's first flutters, his father vanished, no goodbye, no explanation, just gone after gaslighting me for weeks about how I was too emotional and imagining problems. The Warren family response was swift and merciless. They didn't ask how I was coping. They didn't offer help. Instead, I was quietly removed from my position, given vague explanations about restructuring, and treated to silent judgment at family gatherings where the topic of my pregnancy was carefully avoided like a contagious disease. "I told you he wasn't Warren material," was all my mother said when I finally broke down and asked for help with the medical bills. But then I had Theo, and when I held him for the first time, his tiny fingers wrapping around mine, every cruel word, every disappointed look, every cold shoulder became background noise to something infinitely more important. Still, buried beneath layers of self-protection, I harbored a foolish hope that they'd eventually see me, not just as the family disappointment, but as someone who had built a life of meaning despite being cut off. Maybe that's why when Natalie's wedding invitation arrived, I said yes, even though I wasn't included in any of the pre-wedding festivities, even though my name was misspelled on the envelope. even though I had to carefully budget for months to afford appropriate clothes for Theo and myself. I told myself it was for closure, that perhaps this elaborate celebration was the Warren family's version of extending an olive branch. I should have known better than to expect warmth from people who measured success in social connections. The venue was spectacular, orchids and roses everywhere, gold-accented tableware gleaming under crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing classical arrangements of popular love songs. The Warren family had spared no expense at the Langham, the most exclusive hotel in the city. Natalie looked like she'd stepped straight from a bridal magazine photoshoot. Every detail of her appearance was flawless, from her custom Vera Wang gown to the family diamonds adorning her neck and wrists. She floated through the room in a cloud of expensive perfume, collecting compliments and camera flashes like valuable currency. When she passed our table, her picture-perfect smile faltered for just a second. "Ellis, you actually made it," she said with artificial surprise, as though my attendance had been entirely unexpected. Her eyes flicked down to Theo briefly. "He's getting so tall," she said. No hug, no genuine warmth, just obligatory acknowledgement before she was quickly reclaimed by her admirers. Veronica didn't even pretend to notice us. She glided past our table with her chin lifted, diamond earrings catching the light, not sparing even a glance in our direction as she greeted real estate developers and city council members by name. I might as well have been one of the catering staff. But Theo was absolutely enchanted by everything. He gazed up at the enormous crystal chandelier, his artist's eyes wide with wonder. "Mom, it looks like a spaceship made of stars," he whispered, squeezing my hand. He thought Natalie looked like a fairy tale princess, and the chocolate fountain was the most amazing thing ever invented. When I saw his face light up with pure joy at simply being included in this celebration, I swallowed my pride and decided to stay for the reception, even as that familiar hollow ache of not belonging settled heavily in my chest. I found our table assignment card, table 19, tucked away in the far corner near the service entrance and restrooms. I had to bite back a bitter laugh. Of course. We ate our over-decorated salads while watching the important guests being seated at the front tables. I helped Theo wipe chocolate mousse from his tie and reminded him to use his napkin. I kept my eyes down when I caught snippets of conversation from nearby tables, my name occasionally surfacing amid whispers and meaningful glances. The Warren family embarrassment had shown up, how quaint. Then came the moment I'd been dreading. The speeches began. As the crystal clinking gradually silenced the room, I realized with a sinking feeling that this evening wasn't about family reconciliation or new beginnings. This perfectly choreographed event was just another stage for Natalie to shine, and I was about to become her most convenient contrast. It started like most wedding toasts, warm, sugary sentiments delivered with practiced charm. Natalie stood with perfect posture, her freshly manicured hand delicately holding a crystal champagne flute, diamonds glittering with each small gesture. Her dress caught the reception lights in a way that seemed almost deliberately theatrical. The room fell instantly silent, everyone leaning forward slightly in anticipation. She smiled, pausing just long enough to ensure all attention was fixed on her. "I want to thank each and every one of you for coming," she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the room. "It means everything to have you here witnessing the start of our perfect life together. I'm truly surrounded by the people who matter most," she continued. I sat at our distant table, trying to convince myself that somewhere in that sweeping statement, I was included. Theo perched on the edge of his chair beside me, his legs swinging beneath the table, completely captivated by the fairy tale atmosphere. His sketchbook peeked from his suit pocket. He'd wanted to draw the flowers. Natalie continued speaking about Bennett, his brilliance as an architect, their perfect meeting at an alumni event, how fate had brought them together. For a brief, foolish moment, I allowed myself to relax. Perhaps this speech would remain focused on her happiness, her future. Then she shifted her weight slightly, her expression changing in a way that made my stomach clench. "And of course," she said, her voice taking on a particular lilt that I recognized from childhood, the tone that always preceded cruelty disguised as humor, "I want to give a special acknowledgement to my big sister. Ellis has always been such a powerful example to me." The spotlight suddenly swung in my direction. I felt dozens of eyes turn toward our isolated table. I instinctively sat up straighter, fixed a polite smile on my face, bracing for impact. Natalie's voice turned honeyed yet pointed, like a needle dipped in sugar. She's quite the inspiration, showing us all what happens when you reject family values and tradition. Working at an elementary school and a nursing home. Raising a child on her own, no husband, no partner, just her and, well, whoever was available to babysit, she said. Uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the room. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. But seriously, she added with theatrical sincerity, it's truly remarkable how she's managed, the perfect illustration of life's alternative path. A single mom, clearly unwanted by any suitable man, yet still showing up to family events. The laughter grew louder, more confident as guests realized this mockery was sanctioned by the bride herself. I felt the breath freeze in my lungs. Heat rushed to my face. My hands clutched the napkin in my lap so tightly my knuckles turned white. I glanced at Theo, whose confused expression cut deeper than any insult could. His eyes darted around the room, trying to understand why people were laughing at his mother. Then came the final blow. Veronica's voice sliced through the room from the head table, crystal clear and devastating. She's our family's walking lesson plan, she announced with the practiced elegance of someone used to being listened to. The perfect example of what happens when you choose independence over family wisdom. Though I must say, for someone who made all the wrong choices, she still cleans up decently for public appearances, she said. Another wave of laughter cascaded through the room, this time not even attempting to disguise its cruelty. For a moment, my vision tunneled and blurred. It felt like a physical assault, though no one had laid a hand on me. Everyone just laughed and laughed, as if it were perfectly acceptable to publicly humiliate a woman who had fought through abandonment and rejection to build a meaningful life and raise a kind, creative child. As if choosing a different path made me worthy of contempt rather than respect. I looked down at Theo. His smile had vanished entirely. Why are they saying those things about you, Mom? He whispered, his small hand finding mine. What does Natalie mean? He asked. I couldn't answer. Words failed me as I faced the impossible task of explaining deliberate cruelty disguised as humor. I couldn't protect him from this moment or shield him from how the Warren family viewed us. My heart raced as I searched desperately for a friendly face or exit. No one intervened. Uncomfortable guests studied their wine glasses and dessert plates, anything to avoid eye contact. Even Grandpa Walter, who once called me his little lioness, stared fixedly at the tablecloth. I was alone again, just as when Theo's father disappeared or when my family positions suddenly became redundant. I could have endured this if it were just for me. Years had hardened these particular wounds. But seeing my artistic son, who drew me as a superhero in his sketchbook, trying to understand why family was mocking his mother broke something inside me. I stood up, not for confrontation but escape. I needed air without mockery. My chair scraped back, hands trembling. Then from the head table came another chair sound, louder and deliberate. Bennett stood, face pale, jaw set in determination. Without asking, he took the microphone from Natalie's hand. The ballroom fell instantly silent. Temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. In that frozen moment, I knew whatever came next wasn't in the wedding planner's timeline. This wasn't damage control or distraction. This was something entirely unscripted and potentially seismic. Bennett stood gripping the microphone, eyes fixed on me alone. I expected him to smooth things over. That's the Warren way, brushing off cruelty as a misunderstandings. Instead, his face showed resolve mixed with disappointment. I reached for Theo's hand, ready to leave quietly. Ellis, please don't go, Bennett's voice rang out. The room froze. Natalie stiffened. Veronica's eyes narrowed. I cannot pretend what just happened was acceptable, he continued firmly. I refuse to let this deliberate cruelty pass as humor, he said. Bennett walked purposefully to our table. I've heard endless talk about family values while planning this wedding, he said. But what I just witnessed wasn't family. That was calculated humiliation disguised as a toast, he continued. Guests shifted uncomfortably, studying their drinks. He turned to Natalie, you mocked your sister for being a single mother, for working honest jobs. Worse, you made her son watch his mother become a punchline. Natalie's perfect composure evaporated, her mouth opening without sound. Ellis didn't ask for this. She came despite years of similar treatment. She brought her son to celebrate your happiness, and you turned that into ridicule, he said. Looking at the stunned crowd, I cannot remain silent. If this family considers public humiliation acceptable, I need to reconsider what kind of man I'm choosing to be. A gasp rippled through the room. Your mom is the most courageous person here, he told Theo gently. I've seen everything I needed to see tonight. With that, he placed down the microphone, ignored Natalie's outstretched hand, and walked out. I stood motionless. The fairy tale had collapsed, but for once, I wasn't the one left broken. After Bennett's exit, silence fell except for the air conditioning hum and a dropped spoon. Guests sat frozen, eyes darting between me, Natalie, and the door. My sister stood stunned, her posture crumbled, frantically scanning for supporters. Veronica broke the silence, rising sharply, "What an ungrateful, disrespectful man." But her words fell flat, suddenly powerless. For once, I didn't shrink under her gaze. Are we leaving now? Theo asked quietly. Yes, sweetheart. We're going home. I walked tall toward the exit, the crowd parting silently. Halfway to the door, Grandpa called out. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have spoken up years ago. I nodded once, understanding his silence but no longer carrying his guilt. Outside, the evening air felt clean against my face. Is the wedding over? Theo asked. Yeah, I smiled genuinely. It ended exactly how it needed to. We drove home in silence, just tire sounds and Theo's fingers tapping the armrest. The next morning, my phone overflowed with missed calls from Warren connections. My friend, Madison, texted, Bennett's speech is viral. 75K views. People are supporting you everywhere. The comments were overwhelming. This architect built something more important than any building. She deserved better than that family. I felt unburdened, years of tightness finally unraveling. Natalie tried damage control, calling it just a lighthearted joke to anyone who would listen. But her audience had stopped laughing on command. Days later, wildflowers arrived at my door, not sterile roses but meadow blooms. The card read simply, to the lioness. The wedding never happened, but something more significant did. For once, I wasn't carrying family shame or apologizing for existing outside their expectations. I had walked out with dignity intact and head held high. And a man I barely knew had shown a room full of elites what genuine strength looks like. 6 months have passed since the wedding that wasn't. Natalie and Bennett quietly ended their engagement, no announcement, just erasure. She returned to Warren Properties as though nothing happened, all wedding photos vanishing from social media. We haven't spoken. Veronica called once, not to apologize but to scold me for embarrassing the Warren name. I listened briefly before saying, I'm not your cautionary tale anymore, and hung up. No anger, no drama. Just final. I realized I didn't need their apology or validation. I just needed to stop waiting for their permission to value myself. My life continues. Same 2 jobs, night classes, and cooking separate meals when Theo wants pancakes and I need vegetables. But I stand taller now. Theo has changed too. His questions are deeper, more thoughtful. He talks about Bennett like a superhero and makes his action figures defend those being mistreated. One night while brushing teeth, he asked if I still felt sad about Natalie's words. Not anymore. Why? Because I think you won, even though you weren't fighting anyone. His 8-year-old wisdom captured something profound. I didn't counterattack. I simply stood tall and walked away with dignity. And someone unexpected decided silence wasn't acceptable. Bennett showed what integrity looks like, recognizing suffering and saying, this stops now. I've learned standing alone doesn't mean being unwanted. Kindness isn't weakness. Dignity, once reclaimed, becomes unshakable. I didn't participate in traditional wedding festivities, but I left with something better than approval. I walked away with the certainty that I no longer need to justify my existence. That's the ending no one expected, yet exactly the one I deserved. If you've ever been silenced by those who should support you, remember. Your voice matters. Your dignity is non-negotiable. You are never truly alone.